Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and today I'm counting up the 5 best Goosebumps Series 2000 books. Now that I've finally worked my way through all 25, I'm ready to start judging. I do have to say though, I found the Series 2000 books to be stronger as a whole compared to the original 62, so there can be quite a few good books that I might not get to in this video. Doing the top 5 of anything is an inherently subjective process, so I'm just trying to channel what the best of the Goosebumps books are to me, which is a mixture of goofy, scary, and with some twists thrown in. But let's jump right into it with number 5, The Werewolf in the Living Room. If you've followed my channel, you'll know I have an inherent werewolf bias because they're my favorite of the classic monsters, so it should be no surprise one of the Series 2000 werewolf books made it into my top 5. The Werewolf in the Living Room combines a lot of my favorite werewolf cliches, with characters being stalked in the woods, mystery wolf attacks around town, the slow realization that they're the actual werewolf, and the struggle to contain their new wolfy urges. This book also gets bonus points for having an absolute batshit father in it. The story starts out strong with Aaron in the middle of a werewolf hunt with his crazy sheriff father in Eastern Europe. We have some creepy scenes with Aaron wandering the woods alone and ultimately getting attacked by a werewolf. Aaron's psycho cop father rescues his son, but then proceeds to trap a man named Mr. Grantley in the woods and accuses him of being a werewolf. The dad then locks Mr. Grantley in a cage and hauls him back to America via boat. This man literally kidnaps someone, and it's played off as no big deal, and it's the kind of unhinged Goosebumps moment that I love. Mr. Grantley then spends a month locked in a cage in the family living room as they wait for the next full moon to transform him. While all this is happening, Aaron has kept his own werewolf bite a secret, and the night before the full moon, he decides to release Mr. Grantley out of guilt. That next morning, there are reports of wolf attacks across town. Then Aaron finds his own clothes torn and covered in blood, and realizes he truly is a werewolf. He tries to lock himself in the room that next evening, but this fails and he races off into the night in full werewolf form. This eventually leads to him getting cornered by the police, but Aaron's father recognizes his son and is able to stop the pack of cops from killing him by promising to dedicate his life to finding a cure for Aaron. When the father-son duo get home, they learn people were attacked across town, so it couldn't have been Aaron, meaning Mr. Grantley really is a werewolf. Aaron tries his best to save Mr. Grantley, but by the end of all this werewolf madness, the sheriff decides he's gonna have to send Aaron and Mr. Grantley to be studied in a laboratory until they're cured. The final page twist to this story is probably one of the weaker parts of the book, but Aaron decides to bite his dad versus spending the rest of his life being poked and prodded in a laboratory. So the book ends with 3 werewolves racing off into the woods together. The story was a fun take on the classic werewolf setup, and it delivered both on scares and some Goosebumps silliness. Okay, the number 4 slot goes to Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. This book delivers on the Goosebumps gore and some full-on chaos as characters are chased around with axes, committing arson, and threatened with murder. It's one of the more vicious books in the series and a great read. The story centers around Spencer, who lives in the poorly designed town of Highgrave, where a large graveyard is the focal point of the city. Spencer isn't the bravest kid around, and after a class field trip results in him forgetting a backpack in the graveyard, he's forced to return in the middle of the night to retrieve it. Here, poor Spencer is met by some exceptionally cruel Goosebumps bullies, who proceed to tie him to a gravestone and then peace out. Spencer screams for help as an evil spirit named Oswald appears and forces him out of his own body. Spencer's parents untie his body and leave the graveyard unaware their son is now possessed by a murderous arsonist. Meanwhile, Spencer is a bodiless spirit floating around the graveyard, and this is where we encounter lots of Goosebumps gore, with all these decaying ghouls floating around with him. Eventually, Spencer forces himself into the body of a rat, determined to race home and save his family from Oswald. Spencer has some rat adventures before forcing himself into the body of his cat. Now in cat form, he confronts Oswald, who's busy trashing the house, and learns that Oswald plans on finding a stronger body soon and will destroy Spencer's body in the process. Oswald traps Spencer Cat in a box and begins his path of destruction through the neighborhood. Spencer ends up swapping into a spider, where he then body swaps into his own little brother Jason. The rules around body swapping get pretty blurry because with the animals, it's like Spencer is killing them in the process, so it's fairly jarring when he decides to steal his own brother's body. I think the rules around all this body swapping are a weak point in the story. Now that Spencer is once again in human form, he races outside to fight Oswald, which is an easy process because he just has to follow the path of smashed cars and various fires. At one point, Oswald chases people around with an axe and even burns down a couple houses. We learn Spencer's friend Audra has also been forced out of her body by an evil spirit and has taken control of a dog. The book loses a little steam as Spencer remembers a reading on a gravestone, "Defeat death only by living." Little brother Jason's spirit then suddenly tries to force Spencer out of his body, which causes Spencer to dance around the yard. This dancing seems to drain the life force out of Oswald, and soon Spencer, Audra, and Jason are all able to force themselves back into human form. The final page twist here, though, has a good old-fashioned gender swap, with Spencer ending up in Audra's body and her in his. It's a bit of a tame and rushed ending for such a wild book, but it does the trick. Alright, number 3 goes to Are You Terrified Yet? This was probably one of the more unique books in the Series 2000 because it actually is a character-driven story, which typically isn't Stein's strength. It's a little lighter on the scares than the other books on this list, but deserves to be acknowledged for actually pulling off some character growth and genuine humor. Are You Terrified Yet centers on Craig, who's a big old scaredy cat determined to reinvent himself at his new school. He quickly gets the opportunity when, mostly out of luck, he's able to save a baby trapped in a runaway car. This earns him some substantial popularity at his new school, but Craig can't help but oversell his bravery just a little too much, and soon finds himself being challenged to prove his bravery in increasingly insane ways. After school, he comes across a little boy stuck up in a tree, and despite his fear of heights, Craig finds himself scaling this tree out of pure pressure. Before he's able to save the little boy, the branch snaps and the kid ends up climbing down all on his own, while Craig crashes to the ground. The crowd doesn't seem to see it this way though, and think Craig rescued this little boy. A couple kids from class call Craig's bluff and claim to have seen him just fall out of the tree. So Craig once again has to prove his bravery. This involves things like Craig sticking his hand in a jar of spiders for 5 minutes. Craig powers through this and manages to keep his hand in a jar full of spiders, but only because his watch caused his hand to get lodged in the jar. This book is full of moments of Craig accidentally having to be brave, and they're fairly funny. There are some more attempts at scaring Craig with fake eyeballs and snakes before the book really ups the ante and Craig is off to a funeral parlor where he's been dared to crawl into one of the coffins. Craig opens the coffin and is face to face with a dead body and is soon on his way to crawling in for a corpse snuggle session. This book has zero issues messing around with the dead, and it's darkly funny. As Craig is crawling into the coffin, the corpse springs to life and grabs him. This ends up being a setup though, and it's just one of the boys in makeup, and he's pissed that Craig didn't run away screaming like he thought he would. Craig would have ran, but he got too tangled up in the coffin to escape properly. You'd think these kids would just accept Craig's bravery, but nope. They're back at the funeral parlor the next night for one last challenge, because now Craig has to shake a dead man's hand and give a cheek-to-cheek hug. Craig turns the tables on everyone though, because this time he got some friends to dress up as corpses, who stir to life and scare the shit out of all the other kids. This finally seems to do the trick and everybody accepts Craig's bravery. The book ends with Craig feeling on top of the world as he's conquered his fears and he no longer is a full-blown coward. And that's it. It's the rare Goosebumps book without a twist ending, and is actually a happy one. Are You Terrified Yet centers around a simple concept, but it's written in an entertaining way that pulls off being funny without trying too hard. It was definitely a pleasant surprise for me, and showed Stein can write a solid character when he feels like it. Okay, number 2 on this list goes to Cry of the Cat. This was the first of the Series 2000 books, and before starting this series, I had my reservations because I had gotten it into my head that these were going to be lesser Goosebumps books, but right off the bat, Cry of the Cat proved me wrong. Cry of the Cat is a fairly dark story with some gross deaths and fun twists that I was surprised to find in a Goosebumps book. The story focuses on Allison Moore, who opens the book with a really unpleasant scene where she accidentally runs over a cat on her bike, killing it. Allison does the right thing and brings this cat's dead body up to the house it escaped from, where she met by a girl named Crystal, who informs her that Rip was no ordinary cat. Rip proves this immediately by springing back to life and freaking Allison out. Allison then heads over to a play rehearsal at school, where Rip proceeds to torment her with some mysterious yowling, and is eventually crushed flat by a stage prop. However, once again, Rip springs back to life and races out of the auditorium, leaving everybody thoroughly confused. That night, we get another solid gross-out scene as Allison starts choking on mouthfuls of cat hair hidden in her soup at dinner. The next night, Allison is nearly smothered to death as Rip latches onto her face while she's sleeping. Allison's able to chuck Rip out of a window, briefly killing him once again, before he hops back to life. Rip scratched Allison up during this ordeal, but she notices that the cuts aren't bleeding. Allison then spends the rest of the book acting very cat-like, which includes wolfing down canned tuna, jumping from high places on all fours, grooming herself with her tongue, and hacking up hairballs. Allison ends up returning to Crystal's house for answers around Rip, and shit gets real weird in the best of ways. Crystal tells her that Rip used up 8 of his lives and tells Allison to go away. Allison then finds herself wandering a pet cemetery and stumbles across Rip's grave, where she then digs up his little coffin and is jump scared once again by Rip himself. The pet cemetery suddenly springs to life as ghosts of other cats emerge from their graves and chase Allison back to Crystal's house in the form of a ghost tornado. At Crystal's house, they head down into the basement and are met by Crystal's mother, who is a horrifying human-cat hybrid creature. We learn Rip scratches steal the life force from people and cause them to become more and more cat-like. Crystal and her mutant mother then announce they're going to be sacrificing Allison to Rip because her mother can't give up any more of her life force. The tornado of ghost cats then enters the scene and Allison's able to distract them with a mouse toy that causes all the ghost cats to fight to the death for it, leaving Rip officially dead after he used up his last life. Crystal and her mom thank Allison for freeing them from evil Rip, even though these two assholes were down for sacrificing her like 5 minutes ago. It wouldn't be Goosebumps without a last page twist though, and we end the story with Allison pouncing on a mouse in a field because she's still got some cat in her. Cry the Cat was a great introduction to the darker and slightly more complex world of the Series 2000 books. It just set a great standard for the rest of the series to live up to. Okay, before we get to the number 1 book, let's do some honorable mentions because like I said at the start, the good definitely outweighed the bad in the Series 2000. Invasion of the Body Squeezers Parts 1 and 2 are a fun little Goosebumps take on an alien invasion story. Its only real drawback is that it probably could have been reduced down to 1 book if they trimmed out quite a bit of the fluff. Another honorable mention has to be Horrors of the Black Ring, which essentially is another Goosebumps possession story, a la The Haunted Mask, that contains some fairly shocking moments. This includes boiling a kid alive in a dunk tank, and some detailed supernatural sequences that really elevate this book over the typical Goosebumps fare. I also wanted to praise Creature Teacher for giving us a goofy monster story, where the monster is hiding in plain sight with some classroom management that relies on a demented ranking system where the kid on the bottom gets eaten. It's a fun story that still manages to work in some gross out moments and twists. Alright, all that being said means our number 1 spot must go to Headless Halloween. This is the rare Goosebumps book where our main character is an irredeemable bully who spends the book getting what he deserves. It's another story where the scares feel darker, and it ends up being the perfect Halloween book that's just the right amount of mean. The story follows Brandon Plush, who spends most of his time scaring people and pulling off nasty pranks. He doesn't care who his target is and goes after little kids and adults alike. He even opens the story by scaring his little sister Maya so badly that she throws up from fear. One of Brandon's favorite targets is his scrawny cousin Vinny, who Brandon spends a lot of time terrorizing. On Halloween night, Brandon is tasked with taking Maya and Vinny trick-or-treating. His best friend Cal, who's just as cruel as Brandon, tags along, and they eventually end up ditching Maya on the street and leaving Vinny at a supposedly haunted house. Brandon and Cal then have some fun robbing kids of their candy before stopping by their science teacher's house. They use some classic Goosebumps breaking and entering and get real gross. Brandon isn't feeling well and takes it upon himself to throw up all over the poor teacher's kitchen table before getting chased away by some guard dogs. Brandon tries to jump across a ravine to escape the dogs, but this fails and he goes sailing right down to the bottom of it. Except, not really. Brandon comes to and is clinging to the other side of the ravine. He's never been across before and ends up wandering through some woods until he locates a strangely quiet neighborhood. There he spots a boy in the same mask as him, who informs him a while back a boy was found splattered at the bottom of the ravine, making it pretty clear Brandon is dead. Brandon follows the mystery boy into a Halloween party, where Brandon is subjected to some nasty Halloween games, like being forced to eat a donut stuffed with worms, dunked in a barrel of cockroaches, and plays a game of Twister that ends up just being a twisty pile of snakes. Brandon is able to escape the party and races back through the woods, where he passes dozens of hands crawling out of the dirt and begging to go with him. At the ravine, he sees the body of a boy dead at the bottom and worries Cal fell chasing after him, but quickly realizes he's actually looking at his own dead body. He begs all the ghost children for a second chance, and they tell him he can return to the other side of the living. He'll just have to help 3 frightened people in 1 hour. Brandon is then sent back into his body and is soon crawling up the other side of the ravine. The first person he helps is Cal, who's still being attacked by the dogs from earlier. Brandon sacrifices himself to the dogs so Cal can escape and considers this his first good deed. He then decides to go help his cousin Vinny, who he left at the haunted house earlier. Things get a little wild as Brandon tries to retrieve Vinny from the house, only to discover it actually is haunted. Brandon's able to scare off one ghost, but then learns the house itself is fully alive and starts to sink into the floor, Jumanji style. The walls start to close in around them. Just before they're both crushed, they manage to escape. Brandon's unsure how much time he has left and races to help his sister Maya, who's being bullied by some older kids. This doesn't go well though, because as he's confronting the bullies, he suddenly just drops dead and they all run off screaming. Brandon is then forced to stuff his own dead body under a bush and returns to the ravine to see if his 3 good deeds counted in time. He greets the other dead kids and their leader says, "Oops, just joking," meaning that there never was a chance for Brandon to return to life. The kids all take off their Halloween masks to reveal corpses in varying stages of decay and announce he's dead like them forever. The book then kind of ends on a happy note of its own because Brandon then decides if he's gonna be a ghost, he might as well enjoy it. This means Brandon ends the book wanting to go scare some trick-or-treaters. Headless Halloween was a nice change of pace, and it was fun having a story where the main character is a little shit who never gets redeemed. It really lends itself well to a darker Goosebumps Halloween story. Well, that's it for my top 5 Goosebumps Series 2000 books. Let me know in the comments your Series 2000 rankings. Are there any that you flat out disagree with? What are your own top 5 books? I had a good time reading through all of these, and I'm excited to see what the Fear Street series has in store. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,